Alright, so this is going to be part 2 to what if Deku was Taskmaster. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
Treat a bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, no hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the raw fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
Alright, so last time I asked you guys whether or not Deku should have one for all or not. And a lot of people did say yes. I forgot to make a poll on that video, so I don't know if everyone is that mind or has the same idea, because there are a lot of people who would disagree but don't comment because I don't know, it's just easier just to vote. So I'll put a I'll put a poll on this one and then see if you guys actually want it. So yeah, because I know a lot of people like Taskmaster because he doesn't have like a power that physically enhances himself. He only has the power to copy others. So that's what a lot of people like about him. And what a lot of people said, if Deku was to get one for all, he could have the ability to copy quirks. And I was thinking about this, and I was like, that's kind of a leap in power. But then I looked into it, and there actually is a version of Taskmaster that is able to copy powers. I believe it comes from Earth 1610. So yeah, I only saw, there isn't much information about him. I read the kind of powers he has, and it said that he's able to copy powers of people who attack him. So we could introduce that, but I don't know, because then it might just become like all for one Deku, or one for all, or not all for one. Yeah, so I don't know, I'll put a poll. And yeah, so in the last part we just got done with the entry exam, and yeah, so Deku would get that letter from UA explaining about how he would get into class 1A, and I would say that his score from overall wouldn't be like number 1. I think he would be like in the top probably 6. Just doing a little bit better than he does in canon, since I believe he got like 60 hero points. So on this one, let's say his overall points would be around, let's say like 80, saying that he was able to take out like a couple 1-pointers and 2-pointers in between. So yeah, I don't know if that would make him in the top 6 or something, but let's say he was. So after this, he got this letter, he would be like, yeah, of course I got into UA. They would have been, dumb not to get me in there. I'm a genius in terms of fighting. So yeah, so we got to the first day, and this is when Deku actually walks through the door, and he looks through, and he actually sees Bakugo, and a student actually yelling at Bakugo, and this person is actually Ida. So Deku doesn't want to say much because he doesn't want to talk to Bakugo. He's not really on the they're not really on friendly terms necessarily, so he doesn't really find a reason to talk to him. But this is when Ida would come to talk to him, and he would talk about how he was a better student than him, since he found out there was other requirements other than just destroying robots. And at first Deku would be like, what do you mean by this? And this is when Ida would explain about the hero points, and this is when he'd be like, oh yeah, I guess I am that great. And I think he would start kind of laughing to kind of to show how not really too arrogant, because I don't want to make him too, but he is that kind of, has that kind of cocky and attitude to him. So yeah, so this is when Bakugo would try to talk to Deku, and he'd be like, listen, you only got in out of pure luck, so don't expect so much out of yourself, because I'm the number 1. And this is when Deku would kind of have his hand over his neck and be like, yeah, whatever you say. And he would try to ignore Bakugo, which would make him more mad. He's like, hey nerd, don't ignore me. That's what he would say to him. And then as this is going on, this is when Uraraka would come in, and she would go up to Deku and kind of poke him on the shoulder to get his attention. And she would be like, oh, I would like to thank you for saving me back there. Was your name Midoriya? And this is when Deku would turn around and look at her, and then he would kind of focus his stare at her, and he was like, oh, I remember you. You're that girl from the entry exam. And she's like, oh yeah, like I said, I wanted to thank you. But before she could really finish, this is when Deku's like, alright, just don't try to get hurt again, because I won't always be there. And she was like, oh, well, I'll try. And this is when Aizawa would come in, but people wouldn't really know that he's a teacher, since he looks like he hasn't slept in a while, and he's in that kind of sleeping bag. So this is when he would get out of his sleeping bag and be like, alright, stop with the chit chat, everyone get ready, we're going out to the field. And this is when Ito was like, so we're not going to orientation? He's like, no, we're going to do a quirk assessment. And he's like, oh, by the way, whoever does the least or whoever does the worst actually gets expelled. And this is when the class would be like, you can't do that. He's like, I've done it before in the past. I've expelled an entire class. I could do pretty much whatever I want. So they would just get ready to go out to the field. So when Deku actually goes to change, I would say that he actually has weighted clothing, because this is the kind of way to break his limitations, or human limitations, from actually doing other stuff than like regular training. So let's say it's around 100 kilos, like similar to how Goku actually had in original Dragon Ball. So yeah. So people would be like, whoa, why are you wearing such heavy clothing? And they would see that Deku is really muscular. And he's like, yeah, it's part of my training to optimize my quirk. And they would be thinking like, what's your quirk? Is it something to do with like superhuman strength? He's like, no, not really. And they were like, oh, are you not going to tell us? He's like, you'll figure out sooner or later. So Deku would kind of walk out to the field, kind of at his own pace as everyone else would go, and he would he would witness the first event, which would be the kind of ball throw. So Bakugo would be first to show the class the difference between regular strength and using their quirk. So that's basically they show the difference between like 70 meters and like 700 meters. I think that was the difference, or something like that. So yeah. And let's start off with the ball throw, I guess, since it's not the first event, but it is the most iconic out of that part, I guess. So Deku would be up to kind of throw the ball, and I would say that he would have seen baseball at one point in his life, so he would know how to throw like a professional. And he is very strong. So let's say he does the world record of a throw, right? And I believe when I looked into this before, the world record for throwing something, without any equipment would be around 400 meters, I think. Something like that. I don't know if it wasn't a baseball, I don't think, but it was something similar. So yeah, let's say he gets 400 meters, which isn't the best, but it's no kind of slouch, right? Because no one, people who don't have any strength quirks are not going to get as far as Deku. So he doesn't do as bad as others, but he does pretty decent. He's like in the middle. So people like maybe obviously Uraraka would still get Infinity and get first place. So Deku would either get third or second, because there is no, he wouldn't get second because Bakugo would have a higher throw or a farther throw, and then so he might get third or fourth, since Shoji is very strong in his own right. I believe he has a grip strength of around 1,500, so he might get fourth or fifth or third. So it's in between that. So after this would happen, this is when they would get to the race. So this is when he would ask Aizawa, like, can I take off more of my weighted clothing to go, my fastest, right? And he's like, oh, what? You're like wearing weighted clothing again? Or, yeah. And he's like, yeah, just 1 second. And then this is when he would take off his shoes, the last piece of, equipment that he had on. So let's say it's around 50 for each. So he would take off his shoes, and then he would prepare himself in a kind of sprinter kind of stance that you would see normally. And he would actually get, let's say he ties for first with Ida. So this is where he gets into the kind of superhuman levels of strength. So yeah, after this was done, this is when they get to the grip strength. And I would say Deku would probably get second place. Barely. I think Shoji, Shoji would get slightly more than him. So let's say Deku has a grip strength of 1,000 kilograms. So yeah. So the other kind of events he would do pretty well, since he is the most, or he's either the first or second most physically strong after Shoji, because no one really talks about how strong Shoji is, but he is actually really strong, physically at least. So yeah. So after that was done, the person that would get last place would be the Invisible Girl, I would say, because I don't think she would have an event that would like boost her average, right? Like Mineta does with the kind of side, what was it? Side to sides? I forgot what they're called, but yeah. So as the class hears this, and they're all distraught hearing that a student got was expelled. This is when Deku would be like, ah, geez, right? And he would sigh. He's like, oh, looks like I have to step in. And then this is where he would try to convince Aizawa to kind of keep her in, right? Deku would walk up to Aizawa with his hands in his pockets, and then be like, he would say like, look, Aizawa, let me tell you something. These students here tried their best, right? And you could obviously see they have a lot of potential, so why kick out someone who can potentially be, a top ranking hero? They obviously just need a few, they need to work out a few things, but this is why we're going to UA, so we could learn. And seeing this, Aizawa would get kind of mad because, or he would get kind of annoyed that he's talking really casual to him. But he would see that he has a, good intentions of trying to let this person stay. So he's like, all right, fine. But he would look at the girl and be like, you need to, or he wouldn't know exactly, they would know where she is because of the clothes. So he would look at her general direction, and he would be like, all right, look, you gotta train harder than everyone else since you got the lowest score, so I expect good things from you. And this is when people would be like, would start praising Deku for letting her be in the class, or convincing Aizawa to let her in the class. So then he would just be like, nah, it's nothing, and would just walk away, getting back to class. So we'll, skip ahead, and this is when they actually get to the last period with All Might with the combat instruction. So this is where All Might would come through and be like, I am here as your combat instructor. And this is when Deku would be kind of leaning back in his chair and just, not really paying attention to All Might. And All Might would look at this and like, that's weird, the kid's not, I thought everyone liked me, right? And this is when he would notice, he's like, oh, it's that kid. And he'd be like, Izuku Midoriya. And this is when Deku would actually, get back on his, he would fix his chair, right? And he'd be like, oh, All Might, it's you. How you been? And people would be like, what? Why is he talking so casual with All Might? And he's like, this is when All Might would continue, so you got into UA, just like I thought. And people would be like, why do they know each other? And Deku would hear the gossip. And he's like, oh, hey, I was attacked by a villain and All Might saved me. And they would be like, what? How can someone be so strong, need saving? And he's like, well, the person wasn't like a normal person. He was like kind of like a slime monster, if you could say. And they were like, oh, okay. So after that was done, he's like, all right, we're going to do a kind of test, right? So half of you are going to be villains and the other half are going to be heroes. So for the actual costume, or hero suits, do you guys want the classic Taskmaster suit with the white skull and the white robes, or maybe in this one it could be green like the picture shows, that kind of costume? Or do you want the kind of more modern design with the black outfit with the silver kind of mask? Which I like both of them, and both of them are cool. So I will leave a poll on this video with both, if you should get all for one, or one for all, or the two different suits. So yeah. So after this was done, and this is when they would actually get changed into their hero suits. So Deku would have the same equipment as Taskmaster, that being a shield, a sword, a pistol, and a bow, and let's say also something that could be used to like swing, so like maybe a grappling hook. I'm not sure. You know what I mean if you ever played Marvel vs. Capcom 3. But yeah. So Deku would have very high levels of precision because of how his quirk works, and he would have seen gunslinger type heroes like Snipe and things like that, where he's able to kind of copy their abilities like that. So the kind of sword that he has would be kind of like a normal kind of great sword, or not a great sword, a broadsword, I think you would call it. Not like a western type of sword, not like an eastern type of sword with like something like a katana. It wouldn't be like that. It'd be like a not a double-edged sword, but you know what I mean. So it'd be like a broadsword, and the shield is something similar to what Captain America has, in the same kind of dome kind of shape. Well, not dome, but the circular shape. I'm just giving this information to those who might not know Taskmaster. So yeah, so the pistol is kind of normal, and the bow would have some certain types of arrows, just like so he could have some versatility with that. So yeah, after they got changed, this is when they would pick the teams, and it would be the same teams as it was in canon, with Bakugo and Ida versus Deku and Uraraka. So Deku would look at the kind of map of the building, and he would say like they're probably at the top, since it would take the longest to get there. So they would both walk in, and this is when Bakugo would be ready to kind of fight both Deku and Uraraka. So what Deku does, or Bakugo would rush towards Deku, and Deku would know what type of moves he would do, since he's always seen Bakugo and he knows his kind of fighting style. So he would go with that kind of hook, and what he would do is that he would move his arm out of the way. He would kind of like parry his arm and then hit him with the back of his shield to kind of hit him towards the wall. And as this is going down, he would tell Uraraka to go to the first or the top floor so that they could actually meet up where the bomb is at. So Bakugo wouldn't let this happen, and he would try to explode near Uraraka, and Deku would rush towards to shield her with his shield. And this would kind of leave Deku kind of open, and this is where Bakugo would rush towards him, and this is when Deku would go to try to parry again, but instead of the regular attack that he thought he was going to do, this is when he actually changes up his fighting style and actually uses the explosion as a smokescreen, landing a pretty good punch towards Deku's face, knocking him back a few bit. So Deku would get back up, seeing this, and what he would do is that he would kind of do he would rush with his shield, and as Bakugo would come to kind of explode it, he would kind of deflect his hand using his shield to kind of elbow him in the stomach, kind of pushing him back as well. So Bakugo's on the ground as this is happening. So what he does is that he kind of explodes the ground underneath him to make a big like smoke screen, right? So in this kind of confusion, they would actually what's it called? In this kind of confusion, Bakugo would actually use it to go behind Deku to kind of land a hit on him. So in this kind of smoke, Bakugo's not really able to find Deku. So what happens is that he hears Ida's voice, right? He's like, Bakugo, what are you doing? We're supposed to stick by the plan. And this is when Bakugo's like, shut up, I'm trying to, work here. And this is when he would hear like a something getting pulled back, right? And the person actually saying this was actually Deku. He actually used this, he's actually able to mimic voices. That's one of Taskmaster's abilities. So as this, he hears the pull back of a bow, he's like, where's that sound coming from? Ida, are you there? And he would be like, oh, he wouldn't really say anything. So this is when Deku would pull out the string and let it go. And what would happen is that the kind of bow, the head of the arrow, would actually open up, and this would actually open a kind of net, right, and pin Bakugo to the wall, not letting him use his quirk, right? So after a few seconds of that, this would actually shock him, right? So the kind of net which would activate, and some shock would be Bakugo would be shocked with some electricity, and he would be knocked out. Deku would then wrap the kind of tape around him and join Uraraka. So the same thing would happen where Ida would move everything out of the way so that Uraraka wouldn't have any ammo. And yeah, so what then happens is that Ida starts to kind of move the bomb, running around trying to not let her touch it, right? So this is when Deku would come, and that's basically what would happen. So Deku would tell Uraraka to kind of make his shield kind of zero, have no gravity, right? And she's like, oh, why is that? And what he does, he tries to predict where Ida is going to go next, right? So what he does is that he throws his kind of shield, right, around, and it starts ricocheting faster than it normally would since it has no gravity. So as he's analyzing the situation, Ida's trying to run faster and faster so that he won't get hit by it. So what Deku does is that he charges Ida with the kind of the flat side of his sword to kind of push him, right? So what Ida does is that it's slow enough for him to jump over, so that's what he does. And this actually causes the kind of shield that was still ricocheting to hit him in the face, causing him to stumble back and let go of the bomb. So after that was done, this is when Ida would be on the ground, and Deku would catch a shield, and Deku would basically point his sword towards Ida, basically pinning him, and Uraraka would touch the bomb, causing it to be, over, right, and them winning. So after this was done, Deku and Uraraka would get praised for their kind of strategy and things like that. So because of how easy they won and how skillful Deku was, he would actually be the representative of the class, since a lot of people would want that. And Deku wouldn't really care too much. He would be like, oh, fine, it doesn't really matter to me. And people would be shocked, how can a lazy person like this be so skillful and have so think so far ahead. And this is when Deku, before he sits down, he would actually look at the class and be like, well, let me tell you, it's my quirk. And everyone would be like, what? He's like, yeah, my quirk is called Taskmaster. And Deku would be kind of smiling, and he would be like, yeah, it lets me copy like any action someone else does after seeing it once. And I could also copy people's voices. And people would be shocked, like, what? That's such a convenient power. Like, you use it to like its full ability. And he's like, yeah, that's why I've trained so much. So yeah. Alright, so this is gonna be the end of the video. So yeah, I'm gonna have the 2 polls on this video, and if you guys want either the classic or the new, and then whether or not he should have one for all or not. So yeah, with that being said, this is going to be the end of the video. If you like it, give it a like. If you want more of my content, please subscribe. And with that being said, this is going to be the end of the video.